Welcome everyone to another observability clinic today, live again, at least live for those that are watching, live for those if you watch obviously recorded on YouTube, on Dynatrace University, or embedded in some other content that we produce. Well, hopefully next time you can get a chance to also join live. I'm doing live sessions on a regular basis. Today's topic is developer observability. There's a couple of links that you will see throughout the presentation. If you're watching this recording, I'll try also to put the links in the description of the recording, right? But I also using QR codes quite a bit. So do me the favor, snap the QR code and you'll also get there. Now let's get started. Developer Observability Part 1, Automated Diagnostics, Dynatrace for Developers. What are you going to learn today? What you're going to learn today is two things. First of all, if you are on the engineering side, if you're technical, then I want to just show you how you can actually ingest and observe your workloads, how you can make them observable either through OpenTelemetry, Prometheus, ingesting your logs from different log tools, Fluent, Bitfluentd, whatever you have, or you can also use the Dynatrace OneAgent. Step two, then we really focus on all of the analytics use cases. Today, it's really focused about what can we do with the data. How can we analyze it once we have ingested it into Dynatrace, whether it's logs, metrics, traces, real user data, and so on. Now, I mentioned that I have a lot of material out there. For the folks that are now on the live session, I will repost some of the links in the chat window. So the first one, in case you do not yet have a Dynatrace account, you can just sign up for a trial. That trial gets you access to a Dynatrace trial account, so your own tenant. But what's also great, you will be able to also access our Dynatrace Playground tenant. And the Playground tenant is where I have started to use and create a lot of material. You can access it. It has a Kubernetes cluster installed, it's sample apps, it's monitored. You can really do most of the things I show today in the Playground tenant. Some of the things I show today, you will need your own tenant. You need to instrument your own apps. But sending the link again in the chat for the people that are live. This is a link to that GitHub repository on the bottom with a lot of links. Now, let me just show you how this looks like. So this is the Dynatrace getting started GitHub repository with a video that I created a couple of months ago. And then if you scroll down, there's a lot of these live dashboards, live notebooks. We will use some of them today, like for instance, how to analyze Kubernetes clusters, how to analyze distributed traces. This is something important. And then I have a couple of those that are also relevant for platform engineering and so on and so forth. So really, hopefully this is useful for you to get started and to see some of my tutorials. All right, let's go back. Reminder, if you are live, feel free to also ask questions at any time using the Q&A feature. And if you are not live, if you're watching this recorded, then either reach out to me. I'm pretty sure you'll figure out a way to contact me either directly or on the Dynatrace community, or you can just leave a comment on the video if you watch this on YouTube. So, but for those that are live, just a Q&A is good. Now, first of all, step one, making your code observable. How do we get observability data or observability into your front-end, back-end, serverless, Kubernetes, whatever you have? And I really want to, first of all, tell you that the cloud-native way, I think a lot of you people out there that are watching, you're probably looking into monitoring your Kubernetes clusters or monitoring systems where you may have OpenTelemetry as an option, where you have Prometheus, where you're Fluent. And I can highly recommend you to watch some of the content that I've put out there, especially with Henrik Rexed. He has done a great job in the video that is called Open Observability Without Boundaries with Dynatrace. This was a session where we only focused on ingesting data into Dynatrace using these open protocols, not using a Dynatrace OneAgent at all. So just using whatever data you already have, ingesting it in Dynatrace, traces, events, metrics, and logs, and then analyzing them. I have one environment also on my side here that I quickly want to show you. We will use this later on in some of my demos. So what I have is I have a Kubernetes cluster. I'm actually today running on EKS. On EKS, I have installed Argo, and on Argo, I've actually used Argo to deploy, first of all, my OpenTelemetry collector. So folks, if you are not familiar with OpenTelemetry, There's a lot of material out there, as I said, but just to show you how I deployed OpenTelemetry, very simple, very easy. I've deployed it through the Helm chart. And then I think if I go to the parameters, what we support from a Dynatrace perspective, we support OTLP. That means the only thing that I did, I basically specified the OTLP exporter and I pointed it to my Dynatrace environment. So DT-URL, this is my Dynatrace tenant /API v2 OTLP, and then you need to specify the token. Both of these, as a best practice, I've stored in a secret in my Kubernetes cluster. So the Dynatrace URL of my tenant and also the OpenTelemetry token that you need that has the privileges and permissions to ingest OpenTelemetry traces. So that's what I've done. So my Argo actually runs on a Kubernetes cluster. My Argo deployed my OpenTelemetry collector. Argo itself is actually using that OpenTelemetry collector to also send traces and everything else. I also have 2 sample apps installed, easy trade and simple node. And what this means is if I go to this Dynatrace environment, so now this is not the playground, but this is my own Dynatrace tenant. Remember, you can get your own Dynatrace tenant by simply signing up for the Dynatrace trial. And to make sure that you know how this works, I'm just resending that link again because I can see a couple of people have joined since I started. This link here is a special link that gets you to the sign up page. The reason why this is special because it helps me also to track if people come in through my content on the Dynatrace system. So I want to quickly show you what my environment looks like. I told you I have a Kubernetes cluster where I have Argo installed and everything else. So I just want to quickly show you how this looks like. I have I call this hot day platform engineering because I'm currently preparing for our hands-on training day at our upcoming Perform. So this is my my Kubernetes cluster. Here I, for instance, have my Argo namespace. I get to see all of the events. I get to see everything from a Dynatrace perspective. We're pulling this in through the Kubernetes API. Again, no OneAgent involved here. In this case, we're just pulling in a lot of things like every time Argo syncs my apps, then it will create a log. The logs are ingested, and this will also create so-called events, so I can actually see when my syncs are ready. Now, other things I want to show you, because we talk about OpenTelemetry, distributed traces. Argo is actually creating distributed traces. And the best way to look at distributed traces is if I'm looking for the distributed traces app. Now, Control K is your friend. Control K opens up the search, or in the Dynatrace UI, you can also see it here on the top left, search Control K. So both things will lead to the same thing. I can now search for distributed traces, and then it should give me as a first action item or as an app the distributed traces app. Now, what I have in my environment, I have distributed traces that are captured on the one side with our OneAgent. This would be pure paths, but I also have just ingested traces through OpenTelemetry, and they also show up here. And you can see here, currently my ArgoCD server is sending in a lot of traces, and they're all here, and I can all analyze them. Different ways to analyze them, I will show you this later, but just so you know, the cloud native way of ingesting traces through OpenTelemetry is easily supported and done with Dynatrace, and I have this on this particular environment here. All right, let me go quickly back. This is the cloud native way. Now, the other option is the Dynatrace OneAgent way. So we have a OneAgent that has been the way we are collecting data in Dynatrace since the beginning of the Dynatrace platform. It's an agent that you install either on your local machines, on your VMs, that you install on a Kubernetes cluster through our Dynatrace operator. Once you have it installed, you basically get automatic full stack observability. That means we're automatically monitoring your hosts, your processes, your services, your end user applications. We're analyzing it, we are baselining it, we give you all the data, but most importantly, we're also telling you if something is wrong. And we give you everything without you having to do anything else to your system. Okay, so both options are there to collect data. Now, why is this important? Because this really leads us to the power of Dynatrace. We can observe any type of data, however it comes into Dynatrace, whether through OpenTelemetry, Prometheus, however you stream your logs, you can do it through the OneAgent. All of this data gets sent into Dynatrace, through the different ways I just mentioned, the agent, you can stream it to the API, our support for OpenTelemetry, and so on and so forth. Everything gets stored in our Grail, in our the massive parallel processing. We call it a data lakehouse, logs, metrics, traces, all in one place. And then it gets analyzed by our AI. We're automatically building a topology model depending on the distributed trace dependencies that we have, but also of the vertical stack information that we have. And then we can use all of this data in the different ways, the different apps in Dynatrace, whether it's for automation purposes, for custom apps, to query the data and analyze it. Now, if you want to know more about this, if you are new to Dynatrace, I don't want to cover all the basics, but there is a tutorial out there that is called What is Dynatrace and How to Get Started. I did this in August as a refresher and walked through everything with a lot of hands-on tutorials. And just to give you one more link here for the live audience, if you want to see the video and go through the basics, then open up this particular link. I'm showing you this in the browser again. So this is the link that I just sent in, is this Git repository, right? This is called Getting Started, Dynatrace Getting Started. What is Dynatrace and how to get started? This is the video link, and then a lot of content and a lot of links here to that playground environment, the Dynatrace Discover Dynatrace Playground tenant that all of you have access to once you sign up for a Dynatrace account, or if you already are a customer, a partner, or one of my colleagues, then all of you can access this, right? Cool. So this is the What is Dynatrace and how to get started. Now, again, I think I tried to make sure that you really get all the links. So last time here, this is all the stuff that you have now. One-click access to your workloads. I have a couple of sections now prepared to show you how you are actually getting access to your data. If you are an engineer, if you're a developer, you're sending data to Dynatrace through OpenTelemetry, through the OneAgent. I want to show you how you find your data. I also want to give you some pro tips. Hopefully, they are really going to help you in your day-to-day life as you are working with the data. So first of all, find and Control K is your friend, as I mentioned earlier. And if you have a big environment, if you're sharing a Dynatrace environment with multiple teams, then different team members will send in their observability data to Dynatrace. And so I want to just show you how you can easily find it. For this purpose, I'm actually now going over to that playground tenant. So the playground tenant, remember, the easiest way is actually to go to that playground tenant here. This is the WKF1064. Every Dynatrace user has access to it. And I am going to also copy this here and put it into the chat for everyone that is live. But you can also find that link in the repository. Now, this is the one that I've used in a couple of times in the last webinar. So let's assume this environment here has a couple of additional services, also monitors a Kubernetes cluster, uses the OneAgent, Hipster Store is deployed, I think Easy Trade is deployed, different apps are deployed. And I want to just show you a couple of things on how you can easily find different types of entities. The first one, just to cheat sheet here and look at my example on the left, Control K, as I mentioned, is your friend. Control K is the search. But if you don't like this, you can also on the left side find the search button. By the way, one of my colleagues today told me sometimes the icons, what do the icons tell you? You can also expand the dock on the left. Then you actually see also names besides the apps, right? So in case you want to not familiar yet with the icons, just expand the dock. So search. One of the cool search features is if you are starting your search with the greater sign, what it actually allows you to do is it allows you to search for a monitored entity type, or we call it a category. So for instance, if I'm searching for, what did I say, workload, a Kubernetes workload, I start typing in workload. It first tells me, hey, for workload, Dynatrace is aware of Kubernetes workloads. Yeah, cool, that's fine. Now I'm basically filtering my search on all of those that are a Kubernetes workload. And in my just example here, right? I type in service. So I have my ad service, my card service, my email service. And you can see here the way the search works, it is looking for all of the Kubernetes workloads that have service in its name, right? And I could click on add service. And then it also gives me the option, how do you want to view this? I want to view this with the done with the Kubernetes workload app. Now there will be, depending on what apps you've installed, maybe different options, because in Dynatrace we have a concept of apps to then look at a particular entity. And in this case, I'm choosing the app for Kubernetes workloads. Now, another use case that I want to show you, because I will be promoting for you an option to define ownership. So what if I have a service, right? So search for services. And in this case, I want to select a Dynatrace service entity. So services is when Dynatrace sees distributed traces of any type of app, Java.NET, Go, whether they come in from the OneAgent or with OpenTelemetry, we have so-called services. Now I could find it by name, but in my environment, I have already some teams specified. One of my teams is called Ninja, or it's called owners. You can actually specify ownership to an entity. So now I can easily say, hey, Dynatrace, give me all the services that have Ninja in the metadata. And you can see here, Vite, price analysis, or the ad service. If I hover over it, they all have metadata where the owner is Ninja. So it's a really cool thing to actually then just say, okay, let's open up this particular service here. And then it opens up the services screen for the ad service where Team Ninja is actually the owner, right? So that's pretty cool. Now, last example here to find your way around the data, because maybe you're not only owning Kubernetes workloads and not only the services, but maybe you even own infrastructure. Then we can do the same thing for hosts. So one example would be host. Let's say I want to search for a host. And then what my example here? I can even do 172.31, right? So I can even search for IP addresses. So give me a particular host that I know because I have it running in my environment somewhere. And then give me easy access to that. Click on it and you're there. Okay. So these are some of the easy ways to find data, because eventually we want you to send a lot of data to Dynatrace. Your metrics, your logs, your traces from your infrastructure, your Kubernetes clusters, your workloads, your services, your end users. And then you want to have an easy way to find things. So Control K is a great way to navigate around. So this is how you find your data. A couple of pro tips that I have for you. First of all, I want you to follow some of the Kubernetes best practices, especially on Kubernetes. There is the option to specify metadata in terms of labels, Kubernetes app.kubernetes.io name, version, and part of. This metadata will be extracted from Dynatrace and will then be used to give you access to your services also with this particular type of metadata through the so-called releases screen. So there's a releases screen in Dynatrace, and if you have specified this metadata on a Kubernetes workload or as an environment variable for either your containers, the stuff that runs in the containers, or if this works for anything, this can be a Java process running on a Linux machine or on a Windows machine, then this information shows up in the release inventory. That's the first pro tip. And for Kubernetes, seriously, there should be no excuse not to at least specify these app.kubernetes.io, at least these three, and then you get the nice overview. There's also a QR code again to another one of my tips and tricks tutorials. Next thing, Dynatrace extracts metadata for ownership. You saw the Ninja example earlier. How does Ninja get in there? Well, you can do it manually through the UI, but we love configuration as code. So that means as part of a deployment, you can also specify the DT owner as a label. Now you can either do it as DT owner, you can also do it through DT custom prop as an environment variable and then specify one or multiple owners. You can also, if you have ownership information, so team identifiers already specified in another way, you can actually configure in Dynatrace how Dynatrace should extract ownership information. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And as I said, there's also a tutorial on that particular tenant, the playground tenant, on how to do this. Last pro tip that I have for you, actually not the last pro, there's one more, define a site reliability guardian. The Site Reliability Guardian is a great app for every engineer to specify what is important for you as you're deploying a new version. And then the Site Reliability Guardian can automatically validate all of the data, logs, metrics, traces, events as part of a deployment to give you fast feedback on whether your app, your deployment, is still working as expected based on all of the observability data that comes in. This is a link here, again, a QR code to the latest video on the Site Reliability Guardian. I also want to quickly show you this. So in the playground tenant, that's the that's the public tenant, as I said. Actually, let me go quickly back to my Git repository because I want to show you, and I'm posting this again also in the chat here. Let me quickly go back here because everything is here as well. Remember, the Dynatrace is getting started. This is where you have a lot of these links here. And one of the things like how to enable release observability and how to define ownership. These are two of the tutorials that I just mentioned. I will open up this one here. And then what else do we have in here? There's links to other apps. There's many, many more. And what I want to do now is I also want to show you. Actually, let's have a look at these notebooks, right? Because they do exist and they are here. So how to enable release observability. This is really where I walked through all of the examples on how to add your environment variables and so on. There's also on all of my tutorials and notebooks, there's also a way to give me feedback, devrel@dynatrace.com. If you have a question, just click on it. It will send me an email also with a little context on where you are. So that's always helpful. So this is this one here. And the other one is the how to define ownership. Now, Site Reliability Guardian, if you are in the playground tenant or in your own, then you can install it. Here, it is already installed. So you can search for a Site Reliability Guardian. And the Site Reliability Guardian is a really cool thing because, as the name implies, it allows you to specify a guardian around objectives that are relevant for you. And some of my colleagues, they are currently setting these things up also in the environment. So if you're opening up, for instance, the cards guardian, which I assume is guarding the cards service in my sock shop application in production, because you can also specify tags, then you can actually see here every time when the guardian was executed. This, I think in our environment here, happens every time when we build and when we have a new deployment of the app, we deploy it, and then the pipeline is sending an event to Dynatrace about that deployment, and then we're triggering the guardian. So we see what the quality status is, and we can then combine this also with a workflow, and we can then send you even a notification to Slack, or we can create a ticket if something is wrong. Point is, you can specify different objectives. And what is really new, what is really cool, is you don't have to come up with these objectives yourself. With the latest version of the Guardian, we also now have, we call them templates. So if you go to the Guardian, I'm not sure if I'm allowed on this environment, but if you create a new Guardian, you will be given a list of templates, golden path templates that you can then just fill out. I think you need to do this on your own Dynatrace environments. On the playground tenant, all of you only have read access, but check this out. And remember that there's also a great video here that you should watch. This is the latest Dynatrace app spotlight. All right, let's get going. Another tip that I have for you is notifications. So if you own a particular app and you want to be notified when the app is deployed. So for instance, you're using Argo or Flux or any other tool that is making deployment changes when you change your code in Git and it gets synced to your Kubernetes cluster, then we can use workflows to say, hey, every time Dynatrace detects that, for instance, ArgoCD has just finished a sync job, then I want to send this to a Slack message and I want to be notified about it. So let me show you this as well. This is something I've set up in my environment, but obviously the links, where is my environment here? HCI, so this is what it is. So let me show you my workflows. Remember, this is the environment where I have Argo, and what I have here is the so-called ArgoCD send sync events. So I've specified a workflow that is triggering every time Dynatrace detects a so-called custom info event from Argo, operation complete and active. Every time Argo does a sync, there's an event being created. There's a lot of information actually coming in. If you actually do query past events here, then you can actually see that I had 2 syncs in the past hour. And if I expand this, so this information here is automatically be captured by Dynatrace every time Argo is doing a sync. I see ArgoCD, the Kubernetes cluster, the cluster name. I see a lot of information. I see which app it actually is. In this case, it was the simple Node Dev app. I have a lot of information here. And this one is triggering my workflow. And in that workflow, I've installed the Slack integration. And in this workflow, I said, I want to send a message to my ArgoCD sync channel. I could do something like, if you've seen some of my videos in the past, you can actually expand the workflow here and get some ownership information. So I could extract ownership from that deployment. And then from that ownership, then also extract the Slack workspace. But in my case, I just have it sent to my Argo sync. So if I'm now going over to my Argo sync, and I'm just pulling this over here, right? So this is my Argo sync. And you can see here at 4:54, this was about 25 minutes ago, I got a notification that my simple node dev was successfully synced. Now you can extend this obviously with many more cool things, like a link back to Argo, a link back to your Dynatrace workflow, a link back to the Dynatrace dashboard that shows you all the logs. But it's a really cool, I think, automation tip for engineers to automatically get notified, or to your platform engineers. Cool. So this is my automation tip for today. All right, let me just make sure I see the next slides as well. Folks, by the way, if you have questions and you're live, use the Q&A feature, okay? So what else is there? Analyze your traces in one spot. Now, I've talked a lot about traces already, so I'm not going to go through all the details, but I have a couple of cool tips for you as well. If you want to know how to analyze traces, whether it's the traces that come in through OpenTelemetry or through the OneAgent, I got a tutorial for you. It's called How to Do Distributed Traces and Database Diagnostics with Dynatrace. Let me show you this, because so that you know I don't make these things up. So on that, and I'm sending the same link again. I'm sorry that I'm spamming the folks on Zoom, but this is the Git repository. And on this one, the first one on top is how to do distributed trace and database diagnostics. Because here, I really try to show you how with Dynatrace, you can detect things like what are the slowest requests, what are the ones that have the most database impact. I'm really walking through individual use cases here to actually analyze problematic traces and get to the root cause of it, right? So check out this particular notebook. Essentially, what I'm doing here, I'm opening up the Traces app. Distributed traces, that's awesome. And I see questions are coming in. While I'm waiting for this to open, where do you get those workflow integrations like the Slack one? What others are there? That's a good question. You can install those through the hub. In the Dynatrace hub, you can find additional apps. And there is apps in the hub. For instance, one is called Slack for workflows. One is called PagerDuty for workflows. There's a couple of pre-installed ones, and there's a lot of more coming, but it's the hub where you can find all the apps that are extending your workflows with so-called workflow actions. Hopefully, this answers your question. All right, now on distributed traces, as I said, I have already covered this in the tutorial, but what I love about this here, right, you can say, I want to either look at the traces of the last 2 hours and pick individual ones. You can obviously filter here, right? You can say, I want to have those where the HTTP method was a post, and I want to have those where maybe the the database. So let's say there was a response time that was slower than 1,000 milliseconds. That's a second. So you can filter out the slow ones, and then you can look at additional columns. So what I typically like to do is maybe calls to a database or calls to downstream services or HTTP response code. So you can actually then easily have a look at this. And it seems to get recent bookings. They always have one database calls. Right? Let's just open up. There's one here, find journeys, 2.3 seconds from the journey service. Let's click on it and you can analyze your distributed trace. And super easy. This is stuff, as I said, that is already covered in that tutorial, but you can see here end-to-end distributed trace, also with top findings and with all the information about every single node, timings, thread information, code level information, even logs. If there's logs that have been created, we're also bringing in the logs. In this case, there were no logs created here. All right. And now this here, the find journeys, which is also very interesting, was a trace that was captured from the so-called journey service. So you can also now click on that service and then see everything else that happened in this service, right? So there's a lot of cool things here where we get an overview of how has this service been responding over the last 2 hours, or you can obviously analyze everything for the last 24 hours. You get your golden signals, your response time, your failure rate, your throughput. You get your topology information. Oh, it's mainly calling the database. How is the throughput to the database? You get access to your distributed systems. You get access to your logs, right? And any other events that we would have picked up. So this is really super helpful. Now, as I said, if you want to know more about this, check out the tutorials. I want to give you some pro tips now, because this is what I've been asked for by some of the engineers and the developers, and especially also by some performance engineers. One of the things we're doing, we're using the W3C trace context. That's the way we are identifying a trace and also its individual parts of the trace. And also the parent and child relationships between nodes and subnodes. There's a lot of information out there. Great blog by Sonia. Trace context is a standard, and you can read up on this. We are showing the trace ID, that unique ID, on those screens that I've just shown. Now, what I like about it, because this is a request that I heard, is, hey, what if I have an app and I'm developing it and I'm testing it? How can I get to that trace that I've just created in my browser as I was testing it? And the easiest thing to do this, so let me show you one thing. Here is my EasyTrade application. So this is an app that is monitored by that Playground tenant. You will not be able to access it because we run this in our demo environment, and it's only accessible from within our Dynatrace network. However, what I want to show you, and you can do this with your own app that you instrument. I have my developer tools here. Let me just show you. I got my browser developer tools, and I'll pull this back in a second. What I want to do now, I want to use this app and I want to deposit some money. Let me just clean my stuff over here. So I want to deposit, I don't know, 100. This is just a sample app, right? I want to do an autofill. So 100, whatever currency with Visa, and deposit. So now let me show you what is being captured by my browser. This was the deposit click that I did. And I know it's a little small, and even for my eyes, it's a little small already. So I'm zooming in here a little bit. What is really nice is that this is the request that my browser sent, and I see here the response headers, and in the response header, I see here the full trace context. Now there's a part of it. This here is a so-called trace ID. This is the second part, which is like 30 or something characters long. This is the unique identifier that Dynatrace has responded back, or maybe even OpenTelemetry. If you're using OpenTelemetry and it supports trace context, then it's been sent back. So I can now take this, I can copy this, the 577, whatever it is, and I want to now go to Dynatrace, and I need to move things around away here because I have so many windows open. And I don't want to save this MasterCard because this is just a demo. This is funny. No thanks. So what I want to do now, I want to go back to remember my Traces app. distributed traces. That's where I can easily access all of my distributed traces. And this is also where I just see Oleg coming in with a question, how can I filter traces from a specific host or URL? This is what you can do here. You can go here and you can filter on any attribute on any distributed trace. So you could say, show me only those that go to a particular URL. This would be the request endpoint, for instance, would be your URL, okay? Now, or also the host. Now, for the trace ID, there's also the trace ID. So I can say, give me the path for this particular trace ID. Really cool, because now I'm here with my broker service v1 balance 6 deposit. This was the one I executed. I can click on it. And if everything works well, fingers crossed, I see the real end-to-end transaction that started in my Nginx, was then passed over to my ASP.NET application, and then the trace went on into the selects, the SQL statements. And I have all the details here, including, as I told you earlier, all of the trace context, right? This is the trace data 577, what we've searched for. Really cool. Timing, code level, everything is here, right? So this is one way to do this. Another pro tip that I have for you. So this was the pro tip. You're executing it in your browser and you want to give me this particular trace. Now, why does this often come up? This comes up with manual testing, but this often also comes up with automated testing. If you have some type of automation tool, if you have a load testing tool, a functional testing tool, if you're driving requests and you want to know what is the distributed trace that was created by that request, then you can also easily do this. Two ways. You can either from this tool capture the response that comes back, but as another interesting thing, you can also set your own trace context. So you can basically say, hey, I'm already a tool that supports W3C trace context, and here is my parent context. So whatever path you create, please link it with my kind of fake ID. And I've seen this, some of the performance engineers do, using load testing tools, then generate the trace parent. There's certain things you need to follow here, but I'm just using now a Postman. It's called Postman. Where's my Postman? Postman. Here's my Postman. So I have Postman here. I'm executing now a link to my EasyTrade URL to a particular endpoint. And what you can see here, what's mandatory is 00 and I think 01 in the end. And these two numbers must not be completely zero. What I've seen testing tools do, just increment that ID. So for every request to make it unique, increase that ID. And with this, basically specify what is the request ID. So what I can do now, first of all, I can click on I think I did this earlier. So I'm now doing number 2. So I am sending the request. Perfect. The response comes back, right? Parent ID. As I said, I could also do this even without putting in the trace context, just get the unique response. But with this, I can go back into my distributed trace view and then search for W3C. That's the dimension, that what we call the request property. Search for this. And then let's see if I made a copy mistake. Just copy this again. I hope I didn't copy anything wrong. Copy this, go back in, and then let me just go to the last 30 minutes here, and then W3C, trace ID, check. Here we go, and that's it. Perfect. While this opens up, there's a question coming in. Can I set custom thresholds for disk utilization and for other services whenever I get an alert? Yes, you can. This is called custom alerting with Dynatrace. We did also some material on this. It's just search for custom alerting. I'll try to answer it later on when there's still time and find you the link. Okay. But I want to also make sure I get through my content here. All right. So analyze your logs. Another big use case. If you are on the engineering side, if you're sending logs, then you want to basically get easy access to your logs. How do you get easy access to your logs? Well, there's another tutorial that is called How do you analyze the logs relevant for me? And there's different ways of doing it. You can go to the entity that you own and then just go to the logs. You can also use a notebook. You can then just analyze all the logs and filter based on what's relevant for you. There's a lot of cool things. Now, without going into all the details, there's already so much content that we have out there on log analytics. Also a great new playlist, which is called Learn DQL, because DQL, the Dynatrace query language, is the powerful language that allows you to analyze your logs at scale in a very easy way. So check out this particular playlist on the left. And then we have a couple of really cool videos. And the one that I suggest you to start with is called the Practical Guide to DQL. This is the one that I'm quickly want to find you. It's the OneAgent tutorials. And then also the, here we go. This is the Practical Guide. Practical Guide to DQL metrics is the latest one, and then this one here is the one that everybody should have. So let me also send this over here. Good. And then the other one is the bit.ly Learn DQL. I really like this one. This is the playlist that my colleagues from the platform advocacy team has just started. Really great videos, also use case based. You can see here on the bottom, first explaining all DQL and then some use cases. So check this out. Now, some additional tips on log analytics. Very easy to get all of your logs. Some tips is you can also use automation and workflows. So one thing that I like to do when I get in the morning at 8 o'clock, I want to see, do we have any critical error messages that came in? Or for my particular component, did we have more error logs today than in the previous day? So for this, you can easily create a workflow that is using DQL, so fetching logs that are relevant for you. And then, for instance, again, sending you an alert, a Slack message, or so on and so forth. So what I've done here in my environment, this is something that you would also need to do in your Dynatrace environment, because you cannot create it on the playground, because this is read-only. But let me show you. Where is my, too many windows open. Here we go. So this is where I had my ArgoCD. I don't want to save this. No, I'll keep this as it is. And I have one that I believe I've created with a different account. So it's called send log count to Slack. So this workflow here runs every day at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then it executes a statement. So, right, give me all the logs and summarize it by the count by status, and then send me the results in Slack. And if I bring my Slack back up, I think it sends it to which Slack channel? I think something like Dynatrace demo. Okay, so let me bring this over again. And then if we look at Dynatrace demo, you can see here every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting a message about how many logs were found. I can obviously do whatever I want here, but I just, for purpose of showing you this use case, is a nice automation use case where I get a quick overview of what's happening in my environment. Right? That is relevant to me. Cool. All right, so let's see what else we have here. Security is a big topic, right? For developers, Dynatrace has a lot of capabilities around detecting vulnerabilities. And here again, we have a great tutorial already on how you can look at your vulnerabilities that Dynatrace detected in your code that you deployed. Now, quick pointer here. Let me do security again. I'm sending you the synthetic security. So here is that link, and I'm going to open this up, and I also want to send this in the chat. So this dashboard on this notebook is showing us how to do application security with Dynatrace, vulnerabilities, and it's fully explained on how you access all this data. And all of this, as I said, works very nicely on this Dynatrace Playground tenant. So easiest way is, for instance, to also just follow the links here in the tutorial, the security overview app that keeps you and lets you stay within the tenant. It's a direct link, and it, for instance, brings you to the security app, application security overview, right, where we can see how many vulnerabilities do we have. Now you also see vulnerabilities on your individual services. Now, if you remember this from the very beginning, Control K is my friend. I can, for instance, search for, what did we do earlier? I think I searched for services. And I said I wanted to do service. And then what did I say? I think I said Ninja. And no problems detected. Everything is good. If there would be any problems with any of your services from a security perspective as well, everything would also show up here on that screen, but that looks pretty nice. So all good. But as I said, you can also always go to your service, find your owners, your SLOs, and see if there were any problems detected. But that's all good. Now let me close a couple of windows. Just make sure application security is very relevant for developers, for engineers. We got you covered. All right. Front-end and end-user analysis. Dynatrace not only does backend analysis, but we also are really, really good in your front-end, in your real user analysis, but as well as with your synthetics. Because what I always propose as a best practice, if you're the owner of an app or of a service, and it's critical for you, you should set up a Dynatrace synthetic test that you can use for your production monitoring, but also for pre-prod, for just validating that your pre-prod environment, your test environment is up and running. You can even execute them as part of your pipeline, as part of your deployment, to run all the synthetic tests as part of the deployment to validate that everything is still good. Now, I want to quickly show you how to access some of these tutorials again. Remember, this is my Dynatrace synthetic, because synthetic also creates real user data, but I'll show you a little bit of more things than are just in the synthetic tests. Because if you want to learn more about synthetics, on how to set them up, the only thing you need to do is you need to go over this tutorial. So how to set it up and how to analyze them. What I want to show you is if your app is monitored with Dynatrace, with a OneAgent, you automatically get real user monitoring as well. Now, what that means is if you go into, if you search for real, what you should do is, I mean, there's different ways of doing it. The front end is actually a great place to start, because the front end app gives you insights into the application view from a front-end perspective. That's why it's called front-end. So I have my different apps here, and I'm using EasyTrade. I also suggest, if you want to do this, check out EasyTrade, and let me send you that link also in the chat. So for those of you that have a Dynatrace SaaS account, you can just go directly to that link. Good. What you can do here, you can get all of your real user information. There's quite some traffic on this EasyTrade because we are simulating some real users here. You get all of your performance analytics. You can get your analytics on your top pages. What I really like, and this just shows the power and the depth of the data, if you click on Analyze User Sessions on the top here, then you get to the list of all of the real user sessions that we monitored. So now we are in the user session view, filtering on the application EasyTrade. And you can see here over the last 2 hours, we had quite a bunch of sessions here. They're called here anonymous because the user may have not logged in, or we didn't configure to capture usernames, which is also possible. But if you click on this, if you click on any of these sessions, this could have been your session, then you can see what this user has been doing. And so this user has had several sessions. I just clicked on one. This was done with the Windows operating system. This is the IP address. And what you have here, two things. If you have so-called session replay turned on, you can actually click on that play button, and it will visually replay what this user did on your website. Right, EasyTrade, you can see here how we This may have been me earlier, right? What the user did. This is great if you're doing just analytics and trying to figure out why the user complained, why did people had errors. What's also really nice besides the visual replay is you're getting a full, what we call a waterfall analysis. So if you're a front-end developer, if you've ever done anything around your web performance optimization, then you will love the next view, because the next view gets you an end-to-end waterfall of everything that happened in the browser. Now, as you have seen earlier, EasyTrade is a rather simple app. There's not much on it, but you can already see end-to-end page load times. You get to see where time was spent. We give you everything that you would normally capture in the browser built-in tools. And then you click on it and you can even go to that individual trace if we also captured the backend trace, which we, the way we set this up, have also captured here, right? So this is really powerful. The question that just came in, we monitor Azure App Service with Dynatrace extensions, but I do not see a Trace ID header present. Is there a special setup? It could be with Azure App Services. I assume Azure, so Microsoft Azure, they may have some type of ingress or some type of proxy in the front, and maybe this one is not pushing back the trace header to the caller. That could be. So maybe you need to look into there to get this back. Yeah. But what you can do is, if you're doing this with the testing, you can pass in your trace ID, kind of fake a trace with a unique ID, and this should hopefully be passed through, because it's an official standard that should go in one direction definitely, and then it should be able to pick it up. The way back, I'm not sure if web proxies by default are pushing it back to the end user. So it's probably stripped out somewhere, and I would assume it might be on the Microsoft side. Good. Coming to the last section here, diagnostics and optimization of runtime behavior, memory, CPU threading. There's a lot of really cool stuff in Dynatrace, and has always been there to analyze your CPU hotspots, the methods that are consuming too much CPU, too many threads, methods that are allocating a lot of memory, that are causing memory leaks. So in Dynatrace, we have a big set of features to do runtime diagnostics. And this link here I need to send you, because this was one of my favorites. It was a tips and tricks session. And the tips and tricks session, this was done by Josef, one of my colleagues. And he actually showed how we are doing diagnostics in Dynatrace, how we are internally, our engineering teams are using Dynatrace for diagnostic purposes to find memory leaks, to find performance bottlenecks. So this is the Diagnostics with Josef Schissel, episode number 10. This is also the link that you see here. Now, if you want to use this yourself, where do you find these features in Dynatrace? It's under profiling and optimization. So let me just show you quickly on the playground tenant. If we go here, remember Control K is your friend. If you search for profiling and optimization, this is where you end up on this particular page, where you can then select what you want to do: CPU profiling, memory profiling, process crash analysis. Now in our demo environment, there is as I said, it's a very small demo environment with just a couple of processes, but this is where you have access to the memory diagnostics, the CPU profiling, also the memory profiling, especially if you're going, like if you're going on the Apache Tomcat, you can then also do the memory allocations, you can do the thread allocation. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do here from a profiling perspective. And so, for instance, I have a session, the one with Josef. He showed this, right, and how you can get your flame graphs and everything. So this is, folks, for those of you that need to optimize your runtimes, that need to find CPU problems, thread problems, memory issues, memory leaks. This is where you find it. You can also see here allocation overview, or the survivors, the memory survivors after garbage collection. This is great info that you get out of the box with Dynatrace. Right. So to wrap things up, it's amazing. 50 minutes have passed, 55. What you've learned today is that we have a lot of developer-focused use cases and hopefully also some tips and tricks that I gave you today. We started with understanding, first of all, how you get data into Dynatrace. Remember, OpenTelemetry logs, either directly from OpenTelemetry or also through the OneAgent. We then looked at a handful of diagnostic use cases, how to analyze your traces, how to find database hotspots. We also looked at Frontend, and we also looked at security. And on the bottom, it says workflow automation, everything is code. I'm a big believer in everything as code. That means not only enriching your deployments with more metadata, with more code to tell Dynatrace who is the owner, what do you want this to, how do you want this to be recognized, but also the workflows that I've shown you. You can point and click them, but you can also specify them as code as part of your delivery pipeline. So a lot of cool things, and I want to leave this and take the last couple of minutes for questions. But as a reminder again, if you're not yet on the Dynatrace platform, if you're not yet on Dynatrace SaaS, you can sign up for a Dynatrace SaaS account. That's a trial account that then gives you access to that playground tenant that I showed you, and you have, and then it also makes more sense to then use all of the tutorials we put out on GitHub. All right. So with this, I want to open it up for questions. I think the questions that came in earlier, I believe I've answered all of them. I hope so, at least. If you have any other questions, I have about 3 more minutes, and we can definitely you answer any questions you have. I'll do my best to answer them. If I can't answer them, we can follow up. But yeah, I hope this was insightful, and you can see, by the way, we have another tutorial next week. We have another clinic next week, a webinar with our friends also from Rookout, where we are showing you a highlight of what I've done here today, like a condensed version, but also how a developer, how app observability also goes into the capabilities that we're getting in through snapshotting, how we can do live debugging. So because we, as you probably heard, is Dynatrace acquired Rookout a while ago, and so we want to show you everything that you can do with both sides, how developers can benefit. How can we access the webinar recording? There's 2 things. A, an email will be sent out, but the easiest is also, instead of waiting for the where is it now? Instead of waiting for the email, all of my Bitly OneAgent tutorials. So this is the playlist, and I'm going to send you the playlist now in the chat. Where is it? Where is the chat? Here's the chat. This is the playlist on YouTube and also on Dynatrace University, university.dynatrace.com. This is where you will also find all of my recordings, and typically it takes about a day until we upload it. Okay. The next session, the Rookout session should be announced. Follow me. I think the easiest is follow me on LinkedIn, and then you should actually see my face, and it's exactly next week on the 25th, Justin. Maybe I'm very quick, and I'm just looking at my LinkedIn quickly because I believe they have just somewhere announced this. I guess there's too many of those. October 18. Tips and tricks. There's too many things that I'm doing these days. I know it's somewhere. Wednesday, 11:80. No, this is another one. You know what? If there's any other questions, let me just go in again. This is the last thing. I'm sure the Dynatrace folks have posted it recently. It might be easier. And see their posts. and amplify. Da, 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 da. Da, da, da. This is my, by the way, if you are in the US, I'm going to do a US tour soon, doing some workshops in the on the West Coast as well as in Texas. So this might be interesting for you. You can sign up here. And this is the one that I'm doing today. Yeah, I will, if I don't find it fast, then here we go. That's it. That's the one. Copy link to post. Observability meets application observability means develop observability. That's the one. Sorry for it taking that long. Good. With this, I see people are dropping. It's the top of the hour. I want to say thank you. Hopefully this was insightful. And yeah, try out these developer use cases. Give us feedback and see you soon. Bye-bye.